Rod, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me here.
Could you fill the audience a little bit in on what you do and how you got to doing what you do now?
Okay. Well, Matt, let me just start at the beginning and get to where I'm at today. Okay. I'm a recovering estate planning attorney. So I started my practice in the estate planning world. I started my practice in the real estate world doing tax work, 1031 exchanges and stuff, which then led to estate planning, which then led to high-end estate planning because all of my clients were big real estate investors. Which typically led to charitable planning. So that's my migration in the legal world. And then as I started doing that, got to the point where I had some cases where we'd passed some very large estates essentially tax-free, and then watched the families implode. And the tipping point for me is I had a family where I knew the youngest son really well, and after Dad died, he drank himself to death in about 7 years because he wasn't ready. So from that point, I triggered into what's it take to prepare the next generation for what they're going to receive. And that then led to the creation of the Heritage Institute. And so we ultimately named it Heritage Design, but the heritage work is that third leg of the stool. You have good financial planning, good estate planning, now we need to prepare the kids and keep the family together and the money together for multiple generations. So that's where Heritage came from. Mm-hmm. And we formed Heritage in 2003. When we formed Heritage, it was based on the experiences of Perry Koshel, who's the co-founder, and I. And Perry and I were law school classmates, so that's where we came from. And at that point, he was working with the Boy Scouts. He was the Western Region Endowment Council for the Boy Scouts, and I was in private practice. And we realized back in about '94 that we were doing the same research, only from different sides of the mountain, and started working together. Our experiences, though, my practice was I worked with a lot of real estate investors, I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. So my estate size was large. And the large estates introduced me to larger estates. And same with Perry, he was working with very high-end estates. So when we started Heritage and we created the process, it was based on our experiences primarily working with 100 million and up estates. And that's when we first started training. And so if you came to the early...
I did.
That's right.
I did. I was probably there in 2003, early 2004, and it was great training. But I remember saying to myself, this is state of the art for $100 billion families.
And I don't got a lot of those.
A lot of people who have never met one, much less have one as a client. So I was interested in seeing how your organization would evolve because it was above and beyond what was called for the size of clients most of your trainees had.
Yeah, and you start looking at your target market as half of 1% or something, market share isn't all that big. But what we discovered is the principles and the concepts that we were using with large estates are applicable to any size estate. It just becomes part of scaling it. If I have a family retreat for the $100 million family, we're going to Hawaii for a week. If I've got, in fact, 1 year in back-to-back clients, one was a $2 billion estate, one was a $200,000 estate, $250,000 estate. The principles were the same. $200,000 estate, we didn't go to Hawaii for a week. They did theirs afternoon after Thanksgiving, and I wasn't there. So it became a matter of taking the concepts and providing those to people, because any profession you're in, whether it's financial or insurance or charitable, or Perry was charitable, I was in private practice legal, these concepts were applicable. Now it was a matter of figuring out how it fit for all size families.
Does that lead to the new organization, the new branch?
The new organization is called Janus, and where Janus came from is, if you look, Heritage was the third leg. Okay, so you have financial, estate, and Heritage, but you need all of them to be successful. And as my son Ryan and I wrote a white paper a couple years ago on sustaining family wealth and unity across generations, and we identified those elements that families had. Well, they had all of them, and so we realized that just focusing on Heritage by itself wasn't enough. In the abstract, it doesn't make it. You need it all. And so we started talking to the clients. Amazing, if you start talking to the client what they want, you get interesting things. And what they told us was they want to be heard, they want to understand, but more than anything, they didn't want to be the one that was trying to coordinate all these different professions. They wanted one person that they could talk to, tell the whole story to, and then have that person be, I used to call it the quarterback, but sports analogies don't work with everybody. The analogy I'm using now is the producer in a play or something like that. They want that one person who will bring in the director and the actors and all those different pieces and make it work, and have one person they can trust.
So in Genesis, you're doing more, you might say, training. You're helping people develop the skills to actually bring this off, as opposed to just a theory.
Right.
We're going to see you demonstrate those skills.
Okay.
And could you give us kind of a sense of what are the steps when you're going into an interview? And I assume you're going to go kind of open, empty-handed, maybe
Yeah.
a legal pad. You're not going to bring a lot of paraphernalia
Yeah.
with you. What are the steps from you sit down, you say hello, to you walk out successful? What are the key things you're trying to do?
Well, the first step is to set a clear parameter of where the meeting's going. The purpose of this meeting today is, and that needs to be a sentence or two, so that there's a clear picture. Then I start with, where is it that you want to go? I mean, where do you want to be? Big picture, not limited to what I do or anything else, just big picture. Ultimately, the question is, where do you want to be for you and your family now and in the future? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I start that because I get introduced by people. I'll start that with, what do you think I do? You got introduced, what do you think I do? I don't really care what they say at that point. My next question is, what was important about that to you? Now you're going to find out what's intriguing them. And that'll get you started down that path. Once you know where they want to get to, then you got to know where they're at today, so you can create the gaps. Once you have the gaps, though, it's really important that you understand what the value of filling those gaps is for them. If you don't do that, your fee is a problem, because now it's an expense. If you can get them to identify what the value of filling the gaps are, and which will also help you prioritize what you're going to do, now the fee is an investment. And so the more you can have analogies of, this was real important to you, this cost X, how important is this? And because ultimately you got to get it down to numbers. Mm-hmm. Once you have that, you need to understand how they make decisions. And nobody knows, I mean, realistically, I've never asked somebody what their decision-making process is and have them rattle it off. They have to sit and think about it. You'll have to prod them a little bit and help them. But ultimately, you need to know what it is that I have to give them. What information do they need the right way so that they can make the right decisions? Then you have to give them options, understanding that you're not going to do it all. Even in a firm, you're not going to do it all. And so, and I will set that expectation early on in the conversation. There'll be a team. It's not just going to be me. And what part I'm going to play and what roles I'm not going to play. So that when you walk out of there, they know where you're at. And then, the conclusion is, if we can do this, are we good? I mean, and then ultimately I'll sit down and have an expectations conversation. What does that mean? Fees, and not just fees. If I call you, how long before you get back to me? Are we gonna, especially you start working with higher affluent families, are you gonna make the appointments? Or are you gonna decide to go skiing? Those kind of things.
That's great. So in this demonstration you're going to do with Mary Ann, how did you get to know her? How did you get this appointment?
Well, essentially it's the same way I get with most of them. I have a client that says when they finish with me, they go, okay, you need to meet Mary Ann. Okay, and that's pretty much all I know about Mary Ann is, if you like your clients, you're probably going to like their friends. So, you need to meet Mary Ann, and so they set up the time. I'm going out to her house and meeting with Mary Ann, and I don't know what she knows about me, but I'm assuming it's not much more than we worked with them and it was great.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing how it goes.
Okay, good.